as well as what you say. And if you don't want your likeness or anything in your room, then just turn off the video. If you don't mind, then leave it on. And the mission of our group is, of course, to pay off the Chuckanut Community Forest loan balance, which we have done. So I think we've achieved a goal. And then we also want to protect in perpetuity this property through a conservation easement for the long term. And that's what we're working on for the next year or so. I'll call the meeting to order and welcome all the commissioners that are here. And John Brown is excused. He's traveling and unable to get to a suitable electronic connection to attend. And I think we expect John Hymas to come. And so we'll go ahead and start the meeting with just Commissioner James, Beatty, and McLaughlin present. Actually, I can do the roll call. Hugh, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, John McLaughlin, are you here?
I am present.
And the other two, as I said, John Brown is accused, and we expect John Hymas to show up shortly. We have an agenda for today. If people have had a chance to look at it, could I hear a motion to approve the agenda or to modify the agenda?
Move approval.
Do I hear a second, John McLaughlin?
Certainly.
Okay, any further discussion, anything that's inaccurate or needs updating or? Great, I'd like to call the question. All those in favor, raise your right hand, say aye. Aye, passes unanimously. We will accept our current agenda. I'd like to introduce everybody. Of course, our beloved secretary is here, Robin Albro, and our legal counsel, Bob Carmichael, and two regular guests, Vince and Barbara. Glad to see both of you, and just the three of us. So it's a small group. We do have 3 minutes for either one of you ladies to make whatever comments you'd like to make here at the beginning of the meeting about anything you'd like to make them on. So I'd like to make that time available to now, if either of you'd like to say anything.
Go ahead, Barbara. I don't have anything. I'm here to learn.
Thank you, Vincent.
Yeah, I'm just wanting to follow the process of the conservation easement. That's really important to me, and the work that you're doing on that. So I just want to see sort of where it is. I read through the master plan draft from the city. And so I have some, well, I felt like at the very beginning, they were really strongly proposing protection. That was a really important part. But then as you went on, that seemed to fade away, and other uses and numbers of people who want to have bicycles, or that sort of became a bigger issue rather than staying true to what they said at the beginning, which was this is really important to protect the ecological value of this property. And so I see there's maybe the intent, but the follow through I'm concerned about.
Well, we appreciate you being here, Barbara. Thank you. And anything else?
No.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for both your thoughts and your participation and your support of this unique parcel of land. I'd like to, if people had a chance to look at the May 25th meeting minutes, I'd be open to accepting any additions, corrections, or deletions that are appropriate, and then a motion to approve it. I guess to get started with the discussion, we need a motion to approve it. Would either of you gentlemen like to make such a motion? Or to offer any corrections, deletions, discussion?
Frank, I was away doing research at that meeting, so I won't be able to vote approve.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a lot of pressure on you, buddy. You're usually a very detailed and accurate reader. Anything that you found there that you think needed correcting?
We were talking about using the word preserve, and we never quite decided where to put it. Should it be the 100-acre wood preserve? Should it be the Chuckanut Community Forest Preserve? what should we do? But maybe it just,
What's it?
the word preserve should be, make sure that we get it in somewhere.
It's my observation that you can't approve the minutes tonight because
We've
even though
only
you
got
have a quorum, you don't have a quorum that was present last month.
right, exactly. Yeah, we can still make corrections and
Yeah,
then approve it when we get an additional person.
Yeah.
So, but thank you. That's exactly right. Yeah, John has to stand aside, not having been there. Is there a further discussion about the minutes as they're written there?
I have a question. The letter from the Parks Department about the draft master plan indicated an erosion of our collaborative relationship. And I'm wondering how much of that resulted from actions on either party that didn't involve the other that might be reflected in the minutes.
If you're talking about my posting the meeting, I probably should have said it was proposed and not that it was set in stone. I don't know if that's what set Nicole off or what, but
No, maybe I'm jumping ahead, and this is something we want to discuss during our discussion about.
I think it is part of it's happened since the last meeting. I
Right.
think we got that communication, so it isn't going to be reflecting these minutes, except to the extent that there's some activity they may be referring to in the minutes.
Yeah, I can hold off for the master plan discussion.
Okay. Well, we'll set aside taking a motion about this until we have a quorum of people that attended, which would be another bit of time when John Hymas hopefully joins us. Maybe Robin, if you get a chance, can you give him a jingle just to remind him?
I'll do that right now.
Thank you. So we'll set aside the approval of the prior minutes for the present moment until we get a quorum of people who can vote on it. Then the Park Advisory Board report. John Hymas isn't here, and the other person that often reports on that is not here as well. So I think we'll have to set that aside as well for the present moment. So stewardship plan completion. We did receive a communication, I think, I think there's one that came in just literally as we were talking here from Tina. And let me just grab it and make sure of what it says. Just one second. But suffice to say, what it does say is that they believe that they were grateful of the comments that we all made. They appreciated those. They're currently working on the process of updating the report and incorporating the responses that we'd asked them to address. And they plan to have the report, their final draft distributed to us by the end of next week. So it will be in plenty of time, I think, for the upcoming scheduled public hearing on it. And as we get the draft, I'd encourage everybody to, in a timely way, look at it very quickly and see if there are additional additions or corrections. And so that's as of today. So they're expecting it to get it to us next week, which I think is perfect timing for the additional any corrections that maybe need to be made beyond that. I think most of you have seen that they are addressing the scientific basis for whether dogs should or shouldn't be in the park. And I have not seen yet, but I know that they're also going to be addressing the role of bicycles and in a preserve and how that might impact things from a scientific point of view. What does the literature say? And that's what we've asked them to do. So I look forward to that, and it sounds like it's on a timely trajectory. That's just kind of an informational update. are there additional comments or thoughts about that issue?
So they're going to publish it too, or is this just going to be online?
I think it's up to us to publish it. They'll provide us a copy and we can distribute electronically, or we could probably print it up if that's what we chose to do. Do you have thoughts about that, Hugh? How it would be distributed?
Is there any photos with it? I don't know what it's going to look like, so I don't know.
Well, what I know is that it's something that is a little difficult in a way, in that it's a big enough document that it's difficult to share online. I mean, you can share it online as a document everybody can look at, but you can't email it readily. But we could email a link to it quite readily. So I think we can distribute it in that fashion. I think printing it would probably be a significant expense. There are a significant number of graphics in it, and it would require probably some additional work to make it in a printable format. Bob, do you have a feeling about, do we need to make physical copies and distribute them, or could electronic ones be adequate from a legal point of view?
There's no legal requirement that we print physical copies, but I do think for a report as important as this one, of the stewardship plan, there should be physical copies made, a certain number. And I think the number can be a relatively small number, given that electronic copies can easily be distributed. And I think that they should be, and that's what we should offer people. But I do think that there should be some hard copies of the report available.
It seems like posting them in the Fairhaven Library or other locations to make sure that people don't have access to electronic media will have access to them is another important benefit of printing them.
Yeah.
We think of everybody as having access, and most people do, but not everyone. So I agree, Bob, wholeheartedly that we should print some number of copies. We don't have a budget number on that. We could certainly get one. Robin, is that something you could look into to just see what the cost would be of producing copies? And then we could have some, do people have ideas about how many we should make potentially? Probably sending one to the city, I would assume. We may want to provide policymakers with a copy of it. There may be reasons to make them, as I say, available to the general public in a public setting like at the library.
We had a similar discussion about printed copies of the baseline report that Ann Isinger did in 2017. Vincent, do you remember how many printed copies we made of that?
I seem to recall we had a dozen. Every commissioner got one, so there were 5 that were internal to us, and then there were a couple of copies sent to the library and then to the city.
And I got one as well.
And you got one too, of course. So it was a dozen. I mean, if this time we want to make it 15 or 20, that's your decision. But and I think we just went to Copy Source, and they did the color printing on double-sided and binding.
Yeah, I found mine invaluable.
Yeah, it is wonderful to have a paper copy.
Could I just note for the record at 6:17, John Hymas joined us. Welcome, John.
Sorry for my lateness.
No worries at all. We're glad you're here. Barbara, you had a comment.
Well, I just feel like every decision maker needs to have a physical copy.
Yeah.
We look at it online, but if you want to refer to it, if when you're making decisions or talking about it with somebody, you can turn to a page, it so much facilitates that communication, and it keeps it in front of them in a way that online doesn't.
I was thinking that exactly the same thing, Barbara, that the mayor and the city council should certainly have it. I think the real question is, would it be important enough to make this available to Greenways and to the Parks Advisory Board? I don't know how many people are in those two groups, though. Do you know how many, or John Hymas, do you have a recollection of how many people are on the Parks Advisory Board?
Well, as many neighborhoods as show up, which is probably a dozen.
I don't think it needs to be made available to every member of the Park Advisory Board. I'm not, they have a lot of things that they talk about. And from what I could tell, they've already brought this subject to them once, and they may bring it again. But if we start adding too many, I think it goes beyond what's necessary. I totally agree. The city council, the mayor, the Parks Department should have a couple of copies, and maybe a spare one for the parks, and then the libraries, every commissioner, and maybe a couple extra copies for the Park District. As I said, I would like to have a copy. Add those up, and we're probably talking about a couple, 20, maybe 24 copies.
Well, if we have general agreement that we want to produce this in roughly those numbers, and we can fine tune that later on, we can move forward with that. And would that need a fiscal note and a motion, or is that something we could take out of petty cash?
I do petty cash.
Robin's got her hand up.
Robin?
The question I have is, do we wait to distribute this until it's signed?
Oh, yeah, I
When
think-
might that happen?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed your question, Robin. Do we wait?
My question was, do we wait until I make copies to distribute to everybody until it's signed by everyone? And when might that happen? Because there's not really a time to approve it until the next meeting.
We're going to have well, there is. We're going to have that hearing on the 6th, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a civics part of that, Bob? It seems like we're going to get a draft. We're going to give feedback about the draft. We're going to get a final copy from Herrera as a report. Then we're going to have a hearing on it. So there's going to be different versions at different points. Should we wait until after the hearing? Or it seems like it probably should be before the hearing to me, just to give. And if there are significant changes, we could maybe print those pages again or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's more than one way to do this. If you're asking me, I would probably rely more heavily on electronic copies before it's final, because they're just going to be drafts and they could be changed based on comment, but people should know they're available. I'm not saying we shouldn't have any printed, but if we're going to print some of the drafts, then a smaller number, I think. The bulk of the printing, I think, should be the final document.
Makes sense to me. Yeah. So I think we've got resolution of the concept. If I can look at all of our commissioners and say, is it a couple of dozen copies after it's finalized, electronic copies before that? If we need a few working copies, make those. Does that carry the sense of the discussion?
Yeah, that's fine.
I got head nods all around. Good. Let's do that. Could I back the discussion up? And John Hymas, I don't know if you had a chance to look at the minutes of our last meeting. We didn't have enough people to vote on it until you showed up to approve the minutes of the last meeting. And if you had any corrections or things you needed fixed there, or if you need a little more time to look at it, we can do that and come back to it later.
No, look good to me.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the minutes of that meeting then?
I'll move.
I'll second.
John Hymas moved, and is there a second?
Yeah.
Hugh Beatty seconded. And I'd like to recognize too, for the record, that John Blethen has just joined us. So let's vote on that. It's moved and second. Is there further discussion about those minutes? We've had some. So seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Raise your right hand. Yeah. Come on, guys. Yeah. There we go. We got 3 votes. John Blethen, welcome. Thanks for coming.
Glad to be here.
Great. We didn't get a report on the Parks Advisory Board meeting, and I wondered if you might be able to offer something up.
Well, I could offer you a little bit, much as my feeble memory will suffice. Basically, it was a presentation of the plan, and the action on it was deferred until next month. Nicole's pretty adamant that she wants to get through the process next month. So I did make an impassioned speech for you. Some of what I impassioned was incorrect, but I impassioned anyway, suggesting that we call it a preserve rather than a forest, and a couple of other suggestions that we be inclusive and wait until Herrera, you get your final information from Herrera and do your public process. I don't know how well that went over. I didn't really get any feedback from Nicole, and the board is pretty quiet.
Hmm.
I don't know if that was useful or not, but I tried.
You're muted, Frank.
Frank, you're mu- Frank, you're muted.
Can't hear you.
My dog was barking and I turned it off.
Oh,
Because he's loud, so I apologize. But my understanding from Nicole's letter was that their plan was to take it back again at next month to both the advisory board for greenways and to the Parks Advisory Board. And
That's
so I
what
think
my understanding. That's what I heard at the meeting. Yeah. She's not moved to extend the process. She feels that the process has gone on long enough, and it was time to move on to something else. And, you know, for 1 month, it seems like, hey, wait a month and make everyone happy. You guys have worked really a long time to make this process happy, and let's get everything out that we can get out before we pass it on. I'm a little concerned that neither of these boards are particularly knowledgeable about either the process or the content. And so remarkably naive, I think, in terms of the process. So that will be the next thing.
We will have a final copy of the Herrera report that should be available after the 6th when we have our public hearing on it. And so we can certainly share electronic copies of that with each of the board members and maybe even do some outreach to them to answer any questions they might have about it. So we still will have an opportunity to reach out to them before their final vote. And I would encourage us to do that. Yeah, Vensa.
Yeah, it just occurred to me hearing John say that maybe, Robin, when you send the email with the link to the website and the link to the Herrera report draft before the public hearing on July 6th or whenever that is, that you make sure you include the members of the Parks Board. You know, you could look their names up on cob.org and make sure that they're in your list.
I would say the Parks Board
I will do that.
and the Greenways.
And
advisory
Greenways
board as
too,
well.
yeah.
Okay.
Just a recommendation. I don't, you know, it's just how to make sure they read it before they have to discuss it or think about it.
Right. Is there further discussion of the stewardship plan? Can we move on beyond that at this point?
Yeah, Frank, I have a question.
Sure.
It must have been a month or a month and a half ago that Nicole submitted a public documents request to try and get a draft. What's the status of that? In Parks Department, they have a draft of this plan, or are they still waiting for it?
They don't have a draft of it because we haven't received a draft of it, you know, the final document. And we will get it to them as soon as we have it. Nicole withdrew that request I did reach out to the mayor about it. I really don't think it would serve anybody to have a draft version of something, then a final version of something, kind of both circulating. That doesn't really make sense to me. So I think we can, but I think that issue is resolved. I think they're waiting for it, or maybe they're not waiting for it and moving forward without any intention of doing it. I honestly had a little trouble reading her letter and understanding exactly what she meant. It seemed a little emotional to me, and I didn't get a clear picture of what her intention was. And if I was pressed to do it, I would say that it meant that they were moving forward without us. That's a difficult thing to say clearly, because I think it just is a difficult thing for an entity like Parks to actually do. It wouldn't seem wise. So I don't really know.
Right, this may spill over into a discussion about the master plan, but you know, apart from some of the strong language in her letter, if you look at the draft of the master plan, we are largely absent from it, even though we've done quite a bit of work over years towards that purpose. And then the master plan seems to have some major gaps, largely around the stewardship plan components. And so I understand Nicole really wants to push forward on the master plan. And doing so without the stewardship plan would seem to be moving forward without your ducks in a row.
Yeah.
Yeah, can I just say, to be fair,
Sure.
if she hasn't seen the Herrera plan yet, then you can hardly blame her. I haven't seen her letter, so I don't know how emotional it
To
was.
be perfectly fair, though, I arranged for a meeting with Herrera and her so that they could discuss anything they wanted to know. That was settled facts, that were,
Yeah.
and we had that meeting. I participated in it. There was an extensive discussion about trail alignments and other issues that are kind of the factual stuff. I mean, we had a couple hour-long meeting. So it's not entirely fair. I mean, we made Chris available to her to answer questions.
Yeah.
And so she hasn't seen a draft copy, because I didn't honestly trust her not to just take it and run with it. We really need to finish it. And there were several very important issues that hadn't yet been addressed. And I think some of the more contentious issues, dogs on or off leash in the park, and bicycles and bike trails are things that I think are very important. Also, the naming issue, that they've already settled on what they want the name to be without really having our input in that. And I think my strong preference is to have the word preserve or reserve as part of that name. So those things still need to be considered, I think.
Okay.
But let's move on, if we could, to the, because it's really relevant, is to the review and public hearings of July 6th that we're going to have on the stewardship plan, the draft master plan. The other thing that she took strong exception to was that we would have a hearing on her master plan draft without inviting them. There is no intention to not invite them. Of course, we're going to invite them. And to the extent that they want and are able to explain things, they're very much welcome. I didn't understand what she was saying by that. Again, I read that letter as a lot of emotion and not a lot of direction about actual things we can do. I do look forward to the hearing on the 6th. We're going to have a completed stewardship plan. We're going to have the completed draft master plan. I think there's going to be a real opportunity for public involvement. I hope that we can invite all the people that have been involved in this to date over the past 20 years to come and participate in it as effectively as possible. So I'm really excited about the opportunity to see these two things and to begin to find a way to weave the information from both together into a more complete document. Are there other thoughts and concerns? Bob, sure.
I'd like to understand better what our plan is going to be for distribution of the stewardship plan. If we are going to have a public hearing on July 6th, and I know when we tentatively set that date, we were doing it largely because the park department was trying to rush this through, and we wanted to have the opportunity to get public input before they did. But if the hearing is going to be on the stewardship plan and the draft master plan, we will need to have that stewardship plan available for public review as soon as it's ready from Herrera. And at that point, I think we could send it to the city, even though it's a draft.
No, I think that's the intention, Bob, is that
Okay.
once we get something they've actually finished, and once we get a chance to look at it, I think as soon as we've done that, then we share it with everybody that is willing to read it.
So then in the invitation to the Parks Department to come to this hearing, if we are going to officially schedule it for the 6th, and I'm not sure if it is already or not, but
It is already scheduled. We
if
voted
it's
on it
all,
last
okay, if
week.
it's already scheduled, then maybe what we could do is give the Parks Department, send Nicole a communication that says we will forward you a copy of the draft stewardship plan as soon as it's done by Herrera. We expect it'll be done at this time, and we hope that you or representative from your department will attend the hearing on July 6th. It's not going to give her much time to review it, but I think she knows a lot of what's in it already based on your meeting with her. So just as a matter of form and formality, I think we should invite Parks Department to the meeting, and in that communication, let them know that we will be getting them a copy of that stewardship plan in draft form as soon as it's available from Herrera before the meeting.
Well, and that we're going to also make it available to the Greenways Advisory Board and to the Parks Advisory Board. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
And as much as people want this to be a done deal, I think it's very much something that's we're going to need to find solutions to existing problems we don't know the answers to still. And that's why, I mean, the city's had 10 years to initiate this master plan process. We have asked them to initiate this earlier, and it was their choice to wait until the last minute and to very modestly fund it. So, I mean, I'm sympathetic, but honestly, I don't think we can be rushed. And I think the facts have to speak for themselves. And there needs to be an open and honest discussion about all these issues that is science-based and not a popularity contest online.
And to that end, perhaps we should send a letter back to Nicole in response to the letter that she sent.
No, I hope that would come out of this meeting tonight, that we would get the draft. I'm happy to author it. We can obviously respond to the issues that have been raised.
And one of the things to request, I think directly, I would come out with a specific request to respectfully delay the master plan approval from what she said in her letter, because we will not have time to really have this full discussion on the timetable she set out in her letter. And I think, as John Blethyn said, I'm not sure what another month or two really matters here. I know they've got other things to do, but when I read the reasons for pushing forward, the reasons in the letter were pretty empty reasons, I thought. They really weren't real reasons why it had to be done right now.
Well, that's been the puzzle from the beginning. I've been asking her, why are we on this fast track? And I've never heard a compelling reason. There are other priorities is kind of what it comes down to. And that's supposed to satisfy us.
Yeah.
It doesn't satisfy me. I don't think it satisfied most of the public either.
No,
Right.
people are going to be mad if they're forced to address this on the fly. I think we need at least a little bit more time from what was put out in that letter. And I think the board should specifically request that.
Let's let. Margaret-
Actually, I think Nicole's letter in the last paragraph may reveal the reason behind her push and her timing. She's saying that the park district has to dissolve before the current greenways levy expires in December 2023. And so she may be backdating from there. And, you know, we can't dissolve until the master plan's in place. And so she may be pushing the master plan so she has a year from it and ahead of the expiration of the greenways levy. And I don't know the politics of that, but it sounds like that's an important driver that she's dealing with. That is her and the city's issue. Imagine it's something largely around the politics of getting a levy funded, but that's a little different than our priority.
Barbara, you waited patiently. Do you have a comment?
Well, I feel like if Herrera's report's going to come out and we really want people to read it, you cannot expect people to read it and be willing to comment on it in a week, which is basically what people are going to have. And it's summer. And I don't know if it's possible to extend or, you know, to change the date from the 6th. I think it's the 4th of July week. I think a lot of people, I mean, I'm going to be out of town. I think a lot of people are. And I don't like the idea of that at the last minute, you know, we're being pushed to make the really important decisions, which is how we're going to preserve this property. And I don't know what John was saying about when the board is going to be disbanded. I don't know about that. Maybe Bob could speak to that.
Well, the board will be disbanded a year after the adoption of the master plan. That's what it says. And so a year is a fair amount of time. We're going to need that time because we got a lot of work still to do. I mean, we got to find somebody who's going to own this agreement in perpetuity. And that's still a tall order.
It's a lot of hard work, and it's actually because we set in motion paying the taxes, but the real work is to protect it. I mean, the money part was already set in motion, so that was just doing it. But the protection, I really am concerned. I went to the city. Well, see, the city had their master plan hearing. But I think you're right. When I read the master plan, it's giving all of this strength to the few people. I mean, even if it's 500 or 600 people out of a town the size of ours, that's you can't make a decision based on 600 people who have responded. That seems to me, and she's doing that in the master plan.
Barbara, I don't see our approving the stewardship plan as the end. I see it as the beginning. I mean, that's where we have something to then have discussions at the Parks Advisory Board, at the Greenways, and at the City Council, who will ultimately decide these issues. So I see it as the beginning, not the end of the process. And
I understand that you want to.
We're simply putting the best available science on the table about the issues, which hasn't been done so far and needs to be done.
But I understood that you're asking for people to give comment about that along with the master plan on the 6th. Is that not true?
It is, yeah. But that's the beginning of a process. So some people won't be able to participate, but it's not a dead document. It's a living document that hopefully is going to be integrated into the master planning process. Now, Nicole is certain that isn't going to happen. I'm certain it has to happen, honestly, that the science behind the issues that we are raising have to be part of that master planning process. And to exclude them arbitrarily seems quite inappropriate.
Yeah.
And so, and the people that can fix that are the policymakers. At the end of the day, it's the city council that's going to have to make these decisions. So it's going to be very important that we're reaching out and communicating with them and the other policy advisors So this is going to be a challenge. I mean, we've been told really directly what we're doing doesn't matter, and we have to make it matter. And that's politics. We're going to have to
Frank,
be
there's another way of looking at this. Look, a close look at their draft master plan. What it really is a list of goals, objectives, some design elements, what some structures would look like. It's really aspirational. It's not a plan. It becomes a plan when you include the stewardship plan, how you're actually going to achieve all those goals. And so that's where Herrera and we come in. And so that we're essential partners in that. And so to try and finalize the master plan without the stewardship plan relegates the master plan to an aspirational document, but not a real plan.
Thank you, John.
I'd like to mention that I've read some stuff in I think it was the Herald or the Cascade Daily that she was quoted in quite a bit about the 100-acre wood and the name and when they were going to move stuff along. And so she's sort of winning the PR war already. You know, she's out there getting stuff in front of the public before it's even, you know, discussed our plan. So
Well,
anyway,
we're the ones that need to
if you
fix
hadn't
that,
seen
right?
that, I wish I'd have wrote down the date and everything, but I didn't. I've been reading too many national stories to pay attention to when. But
That'd be good. If anybody has those links, it'd be really helpful to have them. Because I didn't see it, but I don't, you know, I have had my own challenges lately. Further discussion about this?
I do think Barbara makes a very good point about the hearing being the 4th of July week. A lot of people will be out of town. If we don't get the report until the end of next week, that's less than a week of looking at it before people can comment on it, which is really not enough time. We've already apparently got the hearing scheduled. So if we're going to keep it, maybe we should consider continuing it to the regular board meeting in July, which would be 3 weeks later, and give people a second opportunity. And I know the reason we were originally thinking July 6th was because of the Parks Department schedule, but the more I'm hearing, it just doesn't seem like it's worth trying to push people to give comment. It is the beginning. I agree with you, Frank, but it's also the opportunity for people to comment before the board approves it, because I expect the board's going to approve it and it's going to be signed off on, and then it's not going to be changed, and it will be part of the discussion going forward. But I think to have credibility, the document needs more opportunity for public input than 5 or 6 days.
So Bob, the other thing that speaks to continuation is that we're going to be looking at 2 fairly large documents, both the draft master plan and the stewardship plan. I see this as an installment on a beginning of a discussion. And I think that either we can have an additional discussion at our next board meeting, or we could set an additional hearing. I think either one would be fine. But I think it will, just the volume of things to review is going to be substantial. But I think we have to start. And I think we need to make as good a faith effort as we can to get this done in a way that's cooperative with parks. And, you know, if we can't do it, then we'll need to continue it. And I anticipate continuation is a very possible thing, if not a likely thing to occur, given the volume of review material that will be needed.
And we might, you know, I'm almost ready to recommend that we tell people that this will be the first of maybe 2 public hearings on the topic. So otherwise people are going to get the misunderstanding that, hey, we don't have time to respond. What are these guys doing? Right. At least let them know up front that July 6th won't be the only opportunity they have to be heard by the Park District Board, that you will take, maybe you'll continue the public hearing to the regular meeting in July, which is, I think, going to be 3 weeks later. And then I think that would be enough. opportunity.
Yeah.
What's the will of the commissioners? We've got a recommendation from our council.
Well, one
Seems
thing-
reasonable to me. What do the Hugh, John?
I'd
Thoughts?
like to have another 2 hearings, and I also think that at the hearing on the 6th, we're making a tape of it so people can watch that that didn't get to go to it, and evaluate stuff that way too.
It can be a way to leverage interest in it, actually, I think, for sure, in subsequent meetings. Yeah.
And can I suggest that we're gonna need some kind of moderator?
Oh, yeah.
How are we gonna, this meeting is 9 people on Zoom. How are we gonna do 29 people? And, if the bicyclists and the dog walkers all come on, it'll be a lot to manage.
It's a good idea, Vincent. Do you have any suggestions?
I don't know who a good manager is. But we need to, I recommend we think about that. how that's
Robin has her
gonna flow.
hand up.
I just wanted to
Robin?
mention that the hearings will be webinars so only the board will be on and like Bob and myself will be on the screen and we'll be able to talk at any time. Anybody else has to be invited in.
Oh,
And we
okay,
have to, so people can't just be talking up all through the
good, Okay.
discussion. This is how we've done it in the past, so.
good.
I was part of a public hearing a couple of weeks ago with the city hearing examiner, and they had over 90 people at the hearing, and you saw that number. But what they did was they would in groups of 3, they would invite 3 people in to the room and then call on them one at a time to give their presentation, and then a limited time period, and then 3 minutes, I think, or something like that. They were timed, and then when they were done, they would go off screen, and the next group of 3 would be invited on, and everybody could hear, even if you weren't part of that group, but only the actual panel, I think is what they called it, could be seen at any one time. So there's a way of doing it.
Good.
John Lesson?
I've got a question about what your leverage is here. Because Nicole's letter was pretty emphatic that she was basically going to plunge ahead with what she has. So I'm wondering if we could develop some strategies for some leverage so that this has some context that's bigger than the group. I'm not offering any ideas. And my other concern is how does this all fit into the conservation easement? I mean, we've got this master plan with things in it that will never fit into a conservation agreement with the land trust, I don't think. So, I mean, I don't understand when does that document come into play? It would seem to me that would have to happen fairly early.
Yeah. That last point you just made, John, is a really, really excellent point, because if we don't have clarity, as I said last time, the land trust won't agree to the conservation easement. So we're going to need that, but I do think the conservation easement, I mean, in the best of all worlds, that comes after this public process. The public process determines what the rules are. And what the requirements are, and then that would get memorialized in perpetuity in the conservation easement. That's really the way it's probably going to have to go. So I think it's a great point, but I think we need to move forward with this process. And to the point about strategy, another great point, that's kind of what I had in mind with the response, that we need to build a response to this letter that puts it out there to the city and says, look, what we need a couple more months to wrap up what may be the most important part of this whole process. And we're moving forward as quickly as we can, but you cannot move forward in the next month because you're going to undo all this effort. And we're sorry that it's taken as long as it has, but we're moving forward. As I pointed out to one of the judges in that lawsuit that we were defending against Furlan, I said, this organization operates on a shoestring budget. The city of Bellingham complains it doesn't have resources. Well, look at the resources we have. We've got one clerk and one attorney, neither one of which are full-time employees. You guys are all volunteers, and they're trying to put the screws to you for a month, and you're really acting on the will of the people. You're representing people who want to have this discussion, and it's just wrong to push this forward. It's just wrong. And I think that message needs to be conveyed probably to the mayor, and make that request that we're not trying to drag this out till the end of the year, but we do need more than just July to get this done. Otherwise, they're going to undo the efforts of a lot of people. A lot of people have put in years and years of work to protect this place. So I think that's part of the strategy. As to the bikes, I think Barbara hit on that. What strikes me is just because you've got one group in the city that happens to be well organized and can pump out 400 emails in a week, that doesn't mean they should get to rule the city. I mean, there's lots of people who have different views than they do, who aren't organized. I would dare say there's more walkers than there are bicyclists.
Yeah.
And if they're not organized though, and so they don't put that message forward. But the city represents all the people, not just the ones that can mobilize 400 emails in a week. So those are the kinds of messages I think need to be taken to the mayor. They need to go to the highest levels, and maybe some council members as well.
I think John McLaughlin had something to say at one point.
I had lots of things to say, but I don't think at this point. I would echo Bob's comments that, again, I wasn't at the last meeting, but in my reading of the minutes, Rand Jack's comments about what would make an acceptable, i.e. enforceable easement are really well taken. And in particular, he's raising the issue of an easement dependent upon a master plan and seeking an easement that would live beyond any particular master plan, because it is a long-term legal document, and master plans can be changed at the will of the city government. So
Just to be
that's
clear,
something-
what he said was the master plan. As long as we tie it to the master plan, the city can change the master plan anytime it wants.
Right.
Right.
And that isn't a way to negotiate a long-term agreement.
Well, that's a legally unstable strategy. The other thing regarding, say, bikes, it looks like the original master plan had bikes, or idea had bikes restricted to a main trail. Now they've got bikes on every trail, but there's no provision or plan to deal with the inevitable conflicts, either the conflicts between user groups or the widening of trails that's going to result when you have a bike and a pedestrian encountering each other, and one or the other moves out of the way of the other, and that creates a widening of the trail. And so that's what we have now. And a master plan that allows bikes and pedestrians full run of all trails is going to have to deal with that kind of consequence, and there's nothing in the draft plan that addresses it. So basically, it sounds like, as John Blethyn said, you've got essentially a political decision, or a political decision driven by political pressure, but without commensurate planning in the master plan to deal with the consequences of that decision.
Yes, Barbara.
Well, I bring this up because it's so obvious to me the inner urban almost surrounds this property. I mean, goes around. The inner urban is great bicycling trails. So there's a place for bicycles to be in the area, in the general area, not in the preserve or the reserve or whatever we want to call it. And I don't understand why that is recognized.
Well, it's something that I think people have said and advocated for that wasn't heard in the
Yeah.
city process.
Yeah.
Basically, they went by popularity vote. And the problem with convenience samples like they were doing, and
Mhm.
it's infamously true of convenience samples, is that you can manipulate the heck out of them, which is what I think was done here.
Yeah.
But and that's why you don't set policy by popularity votes. I mean, you have to on science. What a concept.
Yeah. Yeah. We have to focus on the scientific evidence.
Mhm.
So
Right. John McLaughlin?
if I could respond to Barbara's question, I think it's as much an issue of privilege. The principle of bikes being excluded from some place, particularly a popular place, doesn't sit well with bicycle advocates. And so just because they have free access to an urban trail is not enough, because they want, access everywhere.
Everywhere.
The other issue related to this, I think, is that the draft master plan includes results of the public survey showing that 86% of people opposed having a wide crushed limestone road
Mhm.
through the place. And yes, that's what their plan is. They're planning on connecting
Yeah.
Chuckanut Drive and Fairhaven Park and the interurban trail, and all through the main trails through Chuckanut Community Forest, with a 6 to 12 foot wide road lined with crushed limestone. And that is opposed by the vast majority of people they've surveyed. It's opposed by people that have presented at all of our public meetings, and yet that's their plan. And so I think that gets to a conflict between public will and department culture. It's just how a Parks Department does things. And so that may require also appealing to a higher authority to get something that's more appropriate for this place. Frank, you're muted.
My dog was barking again, sorry. Good, I was just saying good points. Well said, and Barbara, and thank you, John.
And Frank, if I could add one more point.
Sure,
When I was
please.
measuring trees last week, I ran into someone who does a lot of work with trails, and he's done a lot of work in the Chuckanut Community Forest. And he heard that the city wanted to put in this crushed limestone path. He called it a road. And he said if that's what they're planning on doing, he has no interest in doing any more work in that place. He would see it as basically a violation of community values. And so there is a consequence or a cost of the Parks Department plan. And again, as fulfilling our role that Bob defended so vigorously before the Supreme Court, I think we need to stand up to that.
Barbara?
Well, I didn't see that in, now granted, I just did a quick overview of the master plan. But when the city held their hearing on the master plan to, come whenever that was, months ago, it was really clear. Nicole said there was only going to be the one for bicycles, only allowed on the one connector to the inner urban and to Fairhaven Park. And the rest were not going to be developed to that standard, and we're not going to be done in limestone and, the big area. So what I'm hearing is that what we were told at that hearing is completely different from where it's at now.
things have changed for sure. So, and I think that we can be part of the corrective process to try to bring it back to a science-based, data-driven planning process. And as John said, not quite so aspirational, but actually seriously able to enforce some of these things. So I think let me summarize here for a minute. So I think what we've agreed to is that we will communicate with the city that we're inviting them to the meeting. We will communicate with the public that this is going to be the first of what may be one or more meetings, and that there will be additional opportunities for input on our product and on the city's product as well, and that we expect these two documents to be a joint to inform one another. Is there more? There's all the factual detail, but is there? Yes, Robin?
I think it's really important that there be presentations on both of these things at the meeting. We sort of, at our last hearing, we didn't have that, and I think it affects how people, I just think it's important to have that. And then people can also refer back to it later. So I'm just asking if you guys can figure out who will do that.
So Herrera agreed to do a presentation here and in the other forums as well, up to 4 additional meetings that they would attend and do presentations at. So I'm expecting they will do the presentation of the stewardship plan. Obviously, we will invite the city to make a presentation about the master plan, unless one of you would like to do that.
Yeah, and can I just say to Barbara, the trail plan is on page 22 and then 23.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So
I suggest-
I agree, Robin, there need to be summary presentations in addition to presentation of the document that summarize what's there. John, it might be kind of fun if you did the master plan. Lawful.
Yeah, I think it'd be great if he did it. I do have a political suggestion, and that is that you get a hold of Seth and maybe Skip Williams and explain what you're trying to do, because this appears to be have a heavy emotional component to it at this point. And I may have been partially responsible for that, because I laid out how hard you guys had worked for so long, and that you still wanted to be in the process, and it really may have helped set Nicole's heels, although I suspect they were already set. But I would recommend that you do a personal conversation with the mayor and Skip, who's the chair of the city council parks meeting, so that the presentation to him is balanced. Otherwise, I don't.
Yeah.
The road is not good.
I think that's a good suggestion. Thank you. And I got to say that I was shocked by Nicole's letter, because the last we talked, it seemed like we were on a much more positive footing. I was absolutely shocked. I don't know what turned her in the direction she was in. I certainly didn't do anything, because I was getting surgery and laying in a bed.
I don't think I helped.
I don't know what happened, but clearly there's a very different tone and tenor. And it may just be that she sees her goal of moving this forward on a very prescribed timeline being threatened. I don't know. And I know she feels very strongly about that. I know that for sure. She feels like she just has to do this. It's not an option. Even when the steering committee came to her and said, what about slowing this down? She was very direct. She basically said, you're an advisory board kind of at my pleasure, and you don't make decisions. It was a very odd answer. I didn't really understand. Why she needed to be answered in that way. But to tell this committee that she had chosen and brought together, that they don't get to make decisions. I mean, it's kind of self-evident, and it was not particularly nice way to put it. I think it just says she's under duress from something. I don't know what. But we need to answer a letter. We need to get these meetings going. Is there further discussion about the public hearing on the 6th and subsequent meetings that we may have about this issue?
Frank, I have a question.
Sure.
I last night went through the draft master plan pretty carefully and have a lot of comments. What would be the best way of sharing those?
I think you should do the presentation at our hearing. See,
I agree.
But
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not a joke, John. I think somebody that is very informed, engaged around it can fairly and even-handedly present it, including the things where it may fall short. I'm quite serious about it. I think we need to not be, and you're not a partisan guy, man. You're a scientist. You're going to talk about facts and science-based decisions. I would feel very comfortable with you doing that presentation, and I think you'd be a fair and impartial judge based on facts. I'm not joking. I'm quite serious. And I think,
All right, then let me know how long you want it to be and what ideas or points you want it to cover. I
can do
need some
that.
guidance on that for sure.
Yeah.
I can do that for sure. You're getting affirmative support for doing that, John. Update regarding Wacom Land Trust and Conservation Easement is, to my knowledge, the discussion from Rand is the most current information I have. And so I think, and Bob shared that with us last time. I don't see anything else there except to say that we're going to have to produce an agreement with the city that is enforceable and that is clear. And that's a challenge we're going to have to take on if we expect them to be our partners. And I respect Rand's judgment and advice about that. I think he's right, and I think it's what we need to do. Now, at the beginning of the meetings that Vensa and I and others participated in, that whole list of things we wanted, which were not quite enough for Rand, but were most of what Rand wanted. The group, including the city, readily accepted those and said that they would do it that way. Obviously, there are additional issues we need to negotiate, but those are things that we need to take on as we move forward. Bob, is there anything, other information that you didn't present last time that needs to be brought up about that issue?
Well, what's changed since last time is I think we've gotten farther apart from the city parks department with the change that has been made, that again, Barbara mentioned that we thought that there would be a limit on bicycles.
Mhm.
And now it looks like the Parks Department is saying bicycles go everywhere in the forest. And that could be part of the conservation easement. We could say bicycles go everywhere. And as I said last time, I don't think that would be fatal to the land trust taking the conservation easement, as long as it was clear that bikes get to go everywhere. So the question is, when there's a conflict, though, between protecting the natural environment and the natural world and unlimited, unfettered mountain bike use, which one has priority? And we have to have that in the document. And I feel like I'm farther away from that than I was last month. So we need to try to get there. And as I said, we need to start making some progress on these issues before we can really even present a conservation easement to the city. There's certain things I can do based on what Rand said, but it doesn't take it all the way there until we understand what the priority uses of the forest are going to be.
And I think that prioritization process is a critical one that we had not included before, and our good judgment, and I think something we do need to do. And so that I think is marching orders for us, separate from what Parks is doing. I think at some point relatively soon, this gets beyond Parks to policymakers, and they're our audience with respect to that, I think, and the public. John McLaughlin?
So again, reading from the minutes and conversation with Rand, I thought, his points were very wise, very well taken. And what he's seeking is actually brings up a conflict between what he's seeking is legal clarity of what are the priorities and what is not allowed. And
it's not even what is
political-
and isn't, it's but when both are, which has
Right.
priority. So it's even
Exactly.
more,
Yeah,
a little more
exactly.
subtle than that. Yeah.
Yeah, so that creates legal certainty. So it's very clear whether something is in compliance with the easement or not. And but you have a political desire to please everyone, which leads to lack of clarity. And so we have this conflict between legal desire and political desire. And the Parks Department clearly is sensitive to political pressures. So that's going to make this conservation easement negotiation somewhat challenging.
Agreed.
Yeah. Is there more about this issue, or should we move on? Is there any action we need to take? Is this informational?
This is informational as far as I'm concerned, but point well taken, John.
Yeah, for sure. The city's response to the urban forestry plan letter. I'd like to report that John McLaughlin shared with me a very, very helpful and useful response that has been provided to all of us. If you haven't had a chance to read it, please take a look at it now. I'd like to move it forward for our signature and our forwarding to the city. It's very relevant to our situation because it really establishes the standard against which we measure things. Is it convenience? Is it ease? Or is it science? And I think one of the things John is calling out accurately, very accurately, is that if what these kind of high-level flyovers say isn't quite right, is it truth in the real world? Is there an empirical finding of is it or isn't it accurate? And if it isn't accurate, and you go ahead and make policy based on it, that's a big problem. That's a big problem, not just for us. It's a big problem for the entire city in all policy making. These things need to be based on accurate information. John has gone to great trouble and time and expense of his own to actually find some of these facts that it shows clear contradiction to some of the assumptions that are made in the planning document, and a clear willing of the city to not consider the information they've been given. Now, I feel quite strongly we need to do this for the good of the city and for the future of planning of all kinds that's done. It needs to be done on accurate information, and the city can't just accept a consultant's report uncritically without truthing it in the real world, without measuring it themselves when there are questions called. And just to fall back, as Annalise did in her response to us, and say, this is what our consultant said, and we're going to stand behind them without going out and measuring anything, without more critically evaluating it, seems like something we shouldn't let fall by the wayside. We should really take that issue up. And not only is it an important issue generically, but it's an important issue for us. I think whether or not this is a mature forest or not is a real issue. And I think it speaks not just to the forest we care about, but it also applies to the other very well preserved and very well and very, very heavily used parcel on Seaholm Hill. So I would encourage you, if you haven't read it, to take a read of it, and that if you're comfortable to sign it and send it to the city, So has everybody had a chance to look at it, the commissioners?
Yeah, I liked it. And I liked the particular part about the big leaf maple coppice and how they're coming back from being cut and how they can do that. That's pretty interesting.
We're incredibly fortunate to have the kind of expertise, John, of you, John Hymason, and of John McLaughlin as board members, to have the kind of depth and lifelong experience and scientific acumen and practical work in these matters. I think we have a great deal of expertise on our board, and I really appreciate both of you kind of weighing in on this and raising these issues for us based on, very practical matters. Did you have a chance to read it?
Yes, I did. And I support it. I also want to reiterate, if I haven't done it before, I can't remember if I told you guys or not, but when Fairhaven Park opened, they built a gate before the brick structure. There was a gate made of big old cedar logs that they cut right there and built the gate, the entrance to Fairhaven Park. And in the photo of the opening that they had, in the background, in the hills and behind, you can see the forest. They didn't cut the whole forest down to build that log gate. There was 100-acre wood, had old trees in it back then. And so you can date that, just from the photograph even.
So I guess I'd like to call the question, do we want to accept this letter? And do we want to act on it tonight? So I'd like to hear a motion for that.
Oh, so Frank, our original letter concerned 2 reports, and Annalise's response concerned 2 reports.
This is
draft that
only
I've done
one. Yeah.
one. And so what we could do is break my response into 2, and the one for the forest status is complete, as you've seen, and I could do another one for the wildlife connectivity.
Yeah, the wildlife corridor and conservation issues, I think, are maybe even more important. I mean, they're a big deal. Do you have any idea when you'll have that draft done, John?
I'd hope to finish it by tonight. Probably be tomorrow.
Yeah.
The only thing I would add to the forest status letter is, if you look at Ann Eisinger's baseline report, she lists the number of understory tree species in Chuckanut Community Forest, which reinforces the notion that, yes, the forest condition is of a mature forest rather than a young forest. So I can just add that point, but otherwise, I think it's good to go. And Frank, your point about being fortunate to have knowledgeable members on this commission, I think applies to the city as a whole. This city is full of people who have depth of experience, and we are loath to allow our city government to make decisions that dismiss that experience. And that applies to all walks of life. We're having to deal with a forested reserve and how that is treated. But it applies to other areas too. And it really gets to resident or citizen participation in government, and who does government serve, and what is the culture? And this notion that we have a good old boy network, basically, or an agency or government culture that's making decision regardless of what the expertise and the evidence and other things that people are offering, is anathema to what our nation is founded on.
So we could send this letter, and then you could draft the other one, and
Yep.
as we move forward, we could bring that forward and make a decision about that. The wildlife corridors. And Bob.
A quick question, John. First, I want to say outstanding letter. Again, we're so lucky to have that expertise. That was amazing. But I want to ask whether you think in the letter itself, and you may have it, I may have missed it. I saw it in your email. In the letter itself, should you offer to make available your raw data to them if they actually want to look at it? Or is it already in there and I missed it?
And, that's a really important point. The letter in the appendix 1 has histograms of the data, but does not have the data themselves.
Right.
And so that there, what I've entered are all the species and the heights and all that sort of stuff. What I haven't entered is all the handwritten recordings of the GPS coordinates. So that'll take some time to enter all those numbers. But certainly I could make those available. And the reason why I recorded them is so they can go out to the same locations and measure the same trees. But I didn't include that in the letter. I could.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking you had to include the raw data, just reference in the letter
Right.
to making it available if they
Right.
wanted it.
Yep.
In the interest of openness and transparency, and then it's on them if they don't ask for it.
Right.
I could do that.
Robin, you had a question?
I could do this after you guys vote or whatever, but just a logistic question. So if you want to do that now, or if you guys want to
Sure,
conclude your
driving it around and
discussion.
getting it signed.
Yeah, because I'm going to California tomorrow, so it makes it a little more complicated. I could do it, but timing might be a challenge. So do you want me to try and figure that out? Do we want to figure that out now, or?
Could we all show up at the same place? Could we all descend on someplace at the same time and sign it?
I mean, it's not that hard to run it around. The thing I see is John still has some parts he has to put together.
Won't be long.
And no,
It's one sentence.
okay. So if John finishes that and then he signs it, then I could pick it up even tonight and run it around, or I could also do it in the morning too. So whatever works for people.
The morning wouldn't work for me, but tonight would be fine, whenever you
Okay.
want to combine.
Here tonight, I can do it tonight.
You can
Okay.
do it tonight. How about you, John Hymas?
Tonight's fine.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm home for the night.
Somebody
okay.
has to either give flowers or chocolate when she shows up, right?
No,
Yep.
no, you don't have to do that.
But if you-
You're still in the same place, right, Frank? You haven't
Yeah.
moved yet?
Yeah, we're moving
Okay.
on Saturday. Yeah,
Okay.
to a slightly different place, very temporarily. We hopefully move in our house very soon. We're excited about that.
And one more logistical thing. Can I just email the response to people, or do you want it hand delivered? I could get Carl to hand deliver it for me if you need that, but
You mean the signed letter going to the city?
yeah, before we gave some hand delivered copies to the mayor and the city council president, but is it okay if I just email it to everybody this time?
I think email's fine. Bob, do you see any difference?
No,
Okay,
Okay.
great, done.
Great.
And then John, you're going to work on that other one and we'll deal with it when it comes our way. Great, thank you.
So to clarify, I'm gonna add that sentence, print it out, sign it, and then Robin picks it up.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, thank you. So publication and communication strategy. This is an important item, given that it's almost 7:30 now. I don't know if we have adequate time, but I think we have to begin to think about it. I've been working on an elevator speech. I think we need an elevator speech about this process, and we need to get that elevator speech delivered to a variety of people. I don't know who all those people are. I think I've reached out to a few so far. I think the South Side neighborhood, some of the other adjacent neighborhoods should be informed of it and asked to participate in this hearing and in this process. I think that some of the organizations that have participated historically, like Audubon and like the Sierra Club, I think we should be reaching out to. But there's a lot of individuals that are highly motivated, people like Barbara. There are other people, well, almost nobody's as motivated as Barbara, but
Vince,
But there are other highly motivated people that are really care. Former board members, in addition to Vince, are really keen to know when there's something that needs doing. And so I'd be open to everybody's input on who it is we should be reaching out to, and then any ideas for reaching out to the public. There are things. The Cascadia appears to be the official newspaper of record now. The Bellingham Herald is nearly dead, but so Cascadia weekly or daily even it should be someplace we should reach out to. Obviously, there are other social media outlets we should reach out to. I've drafted but not completed kind of the elevator speech part of it. I'm going to need all of your feedback about that. I'll send it around. Sorry I didn't have it done already for tonight. But I think those are things we need to do. I don't know what a communication strategy would look like, but I think the ultimate goal has to be reaching policymakers and advisors. So I think, and we've talked about some of that tonight already. I guess I think this is more an open discussion item rather than an action-oriented agenda that needs motions and all that. But I'd ask each of you to think about how we can engage the public in public education and how we can communicate with policymakers effectively to get them informed and aware of the issues. I think our stewardship plan itself is going to be a major tool in that way. And I think, Barbara, your suggestion that we give copies to people is exactly what I had hoped we would do. I think that's a great way to do it. So they have something they can actually look at and use as a tool. But is there more discussion about this issue? And is there things that people would like us to be doing? Yes, Vince.
Yeah, if we had an elevator speech, we could post it on Facebook and Instagram right away. And, and the neighborhood, the different MNAC groups and email lists, that it can get out pretty fast if we just had a clear message, press release or something.
Mhm.
Great. Well, I'll spend the rest of this evening trying to get that done today. I'll get a draft out to our members and our commissioners and other interested people and get feedback back and hopefully turn it around relatively quickly. I will want each of you to look at it and add ideas and subtract bad ideas. So you'll have it in your inbox later tonight. The next topic is any other old business. Is there something we missed, Robin?
Did you guys need to vote on the letter? Because I don't think that happened.
I don't think we need to vote on it since we're going to sign it.
I think you should vote, Frank, vote that this is a letter of the board, that you're all in favor of it, and then signing it is just evidence of that.
We need a motion then. Who'd like to make that motion? John Hymas is moving
I move.
that we sign the letter that John has drafted with the addition of the sentence we all discussed.
Yes.
I hear a second.
Second.
You seconds. Further discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
Got it. Unanimously passes. Thank you for that advice.
Frank, I would note on the draft master plan, figure 5, replicates that error of the young forest tall for the Chuckanut Community Forest. So this issue is fitting right into the whole master planning process.
It is. Yep, exactly. Thank you for pointing that out. So moving on to new business, remote or in-person meetings. COVID is not done with us. And I kind of said that in my note to you folks when we kind of took a straw poll online, but it's really not done with us. There's a variants that are coming out, the BA 4 and 5 that are have figured out a way around our immune system. Immune escape is called. Vaccines probably won't prevent the infection. The having had the infections, there's a high rate of reinfection, and monoclonal antibodies used to treat it probably will be significantly less effective. So I think there are certainly variants that are going to be very serious and ongoing. My recommendation is that we continue to meet electronically for now, and that when the rates fall lower, one of the reasons rates appear to have fallen is the CDC only uses PCR tests to count as positive tests and not home done tests, the rapid antigen tests. In the county where I'm the health officer, 75% of our tests are rapid antigen tests and would not be counted in the current system. I don't understand that, but I think there's a lot more disease than the public accounting system provides. Yeah, and so you're on mute, I think.
Oh, she was just leaving.
Oh, I guess she was going.
She was leaving.
Okay. Bye, Vince. So but this is just my opinion. We need to make a decision as a board if we want to continue. I talked with Bob. He thought it was reasonable that we continue electronically, or that certainly is an option that we have. Do other people have other concerns about that?
Frank, I would echo your concern about the testing. I required PCR tests, negative tests for all of my field courses for field expeditions. And this spring, the director of the Student Health Center advised me not to require that because so many people would test positive because they would have had it, the antibodies remain in their system. And so we were using exclusively rapid antigen tests.
Yeah, the PCR tests will remain positive for on average about 3 weeks, and some people as long as 90 days when they're far beyond any communicable period. And the rapid antigen test correlates very, very accurately within hours actually of infectiousness. So when you become infectious, when infectiousness goes away. So the rapid tests are in many ways the preferred tests.
The point is, even though someone like me who has been, requiring tests had to shift to the rapid antigen test. I still use PCR tests for myself, but for everyone else. And so it's really disturbing the CDC would revert to the old system.
Yeah, it is. But those tests are about $300 per test. I mean, most of us don't pay for them, but that's about the cost. And they also are, typically about 3 days before you get the result back. So it's a difficult system. At any rate, I think there continues to exist significant risk. Long COVID is a real thing. There's a bunch of data in match controls, a 38% increase in type 1 diabetes. That's a big increase in match controls. That's not the absolute increase, but that's the relative between COVID infected and non-COVID infected. Strokes, heart attacks, arrhythmias. There's a lot of tissue and organ systems in our body. If they have an ACE receptor, it's going to get infected, and those processes become apparent weeks, months, even up to a year after the acute infection, and it's quite a serious thing. So I think I'm very much strongly in favor of continuing to meet at a distance electronically, and that we put off coming together in person right now. But again, that's just my opinion. We as a group, the commissioners, need to decide this issue formally. So would somebody call the question? I mean, raise the issue as a motion, and we can second it and then have some decision about it.
I move we continue to meet virtually in the indefinite future.
You're the doctor.
Is that a second?
Sounds like a second.
So is there further discussion? All those in favor of, for the present moment, continuing to meet electronically, raise your hand, say aye.
Right.
Aye. You hold, no, you're not holding
Limited
out, you're just moving slow. Okay. So that passes unanimously. Other new business, purchasing the webinar software for Zoom for public hearings. We need to do that. Robin, how much does it cost and how do we get it?
Well, last year it was like $40 or $45, and this year it's 70. But if we're doing 2 public hearings within a month, I can buy it just before the hearing on the 6th, and then we can also use it for the one at the meeting later in the month. So
With that information, would somebody like to make a motion?
I move that we pay for it. Yes.
I'll
Okay,
second.
John McLaughlin seconds. All those in favor, further discussion? Hearing none, everybody in favor, raise your hand, say aye, yay.
Aye.
There we go. Again, a unanimous vote. Other new business that we haven't discussed so far? Robin.
I just wanted to say that I'm going to be sort of in and out next month. I'm going on tour with the New Old Time Chautauqua for a couple weeks, and I'm sort of coming and going to do things for the Chuckanut Community Forest. So I just want to let you know that if you try to get a hold of me and you can't, that's why. But I'm trying to structure everything so I can, like, I'm do the minutes like right after the hearing, so they'll be out before the meeting at the Park Advisory Board. That's my goal. But I'm gone that weekend in between the two. So, but anyway, so I just want to let you know that ahead of time. And I'm just going to be gone for about a week, 9 days to California, and I'm still going to be working while I'm down there. So
You are a dedicated and trustworthy and effective employee. Thank you very much.
thank you. I also want to apologize that I sent pictures of my Uncle Bruce instead of the Carmichael Clark invoice. Don't ask me how that happened.
He has corrected it. You have the Carmichael invoice. Well,
Yeah, I just sent it again. My son and I were scanning photos for his memorial on Sunday, and we were doing it late Saturday night. I think something just accidentally got saved in the wrong place. So anyway, that's my Uncle Bruce, who lived to be 100. Anyway.
wonderful. Thank you, Robin. And thank you for your dedication. I'm just going to summarize this stuff and we can vote on it. But the monthly expenses and cash flow sheet shows petty cash at WECU at $2,917. Treasury report basically shows that as of May 31st, Whatcom Treasury monthly report beginning the unencumbered balance as of 5/1 of $269,063, ending unencumbered as of 5/31, $266,525. We received tax revenues of $11,541 and paid out $1,832 in operating expenses, and $12,000 was paid on our loan to the city of Bellingham, which is now paid off in full. Yay. Is there a motion to approve the district payroll input forms and wages for Robin for 24 3/4 hours in May, totaling a gross of $618.75? Motion and second.
I move we pay these bills.
Okay. And Hugh, that was seconding it? Yeah. So
Sure.
moved by John Hymas, seconded by Hugh. Discussion. All those in favor, raise your right hand and say yay.
Yay.
That's unanimous. The consent agenda motions to approve following payments. Payments of May 15th invoice 98,184 from Carmichael Clark for $3,292 for the regular professional services. Payment on June 9th, 2022 of invoice 51,224 for Rare Environmental Consultants Incorporated for $1,038.98 for tasks 5 and 6. Total billing $30,614.73. reimbursement to petty cash for May 31st, 2022, safety deposit box, annual payment of $50 has been increased from 30 to 50 this year. Is there a motion to accept those? John McLaughlin moves. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Hugh Beatty, he beat you, John Hymas. Hugh Beatty seconds. Further discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand, say yes.
Yes.
Unanimous. Robin Albro is going to, in her usual professional fashion, send us all an email, the three of us. John, is John going to do it?
No, but I thought I'd send it to John McLaughlin if that's okay. So to Frank, James, and John McLaughlin and Hugh Beatty.
Great. And please respond by confirming that you approve of paying the bills listed on the consent agenda and the payroll.
And if you could do it tonight, that would help me greatly.
See you.
Um,
See us tonight.
So the next special meeting will be July 6th at 6 p.m. That's a special, as you all know, and our next regular meeting is 7th at 6 p.m. Any other comments or, yes, Robin?
Sorry, I keep coming up with more things tonight, but
Okay.
so the special meeting, I will send out more information to people. Is everybody okay if I send it out this weekend and I don't try to get it out between now and when I leave tomorrow? It's just going to be an informational thing, and I think I should post the master plan on our website, right? So people
Yep.
can look at it
Mhm.
with the map. And
We look forward to receiving it this weekend. Your
okay,
work.
I'll send it out to all the friends and stuff again, and I will change the posting on the website.
Super.
Okay.
John,
I've
blessing.
got a question. I'm starting to work on the next Greenways levy, which tentatively is going to be on the ballot in November of 23. And I wondered at what point will the collection of the levy for the forest be over, and will be the current rate? This is a political question.
Bob, do you know the technical answer to that?
Well, that's a decision that the board makes in November about whether what the levy rate will be and what the levy will be for the following year. And now that we have the loan paid off, I don't know what the decision will be this November, if there will be a need for an additional levy, and if so, for how much. It would basically be for ongoing expenses of the district at that point. And I'm not sure how much we'll have in funds. It's premature to answer that question, I'm afraid.
But I think as an estimation, I think we probably have very much reduced financial needs over what we've had in the past. And it will be just the amount to continue the process while we're actually transferring the ownership of the easement. So I think, could we safely say it's going to be significantly reduced in any case?
Well, from what it has been historically, yes. I don't
Sure.
remember what it was set at last year. I think we did reduce it last
Yeah,
year.
We did.
And it probably will be reduced again from that, but how much, I don't know.
Yeah, there's no way to know.
I
till
was
we
just
know.
going to say the budget was set looking at through the end of 2023. And that's, though it doesn't, if things are on the high end, we would definitely have to have more money come in. So if the expenses are. Just from an accountant point of view, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
You have over $2,000 in reserves now, is that correct?
Yeah, 266, I think, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So I don't think there's going to be much money coming in next year unless something changes. I mean, we obviously. So the estimate, I think, is for about on the upper end, $200,000 for the land trust to legally defend the easement. And then whatever legal costs there are involved in putting that in place, and whatever other technical costs might be called in putting that in place. But it's nothing like the amounts of money that we've done in the we've levied in the
Okay.
past.
So you may not sunset in 2023. Is that what I'm hearing? But it will be for a much reduced amount.
Yeah, and yeah, it would be for a significantly reduced amount, and then we'll sunset a year after this master plan is approved. That's the mechanism.
And the goal for that is fall approval.
Right.
Okay.
And it's actually, to be more precise, it's a year after the city requests us to dissolve. So they can't make that request until the master plan is approved. However long it takes the city to make the request, it'll be from that point, not the date of master plan approval, but the date the city makes the request that we dissolve, that we have a year from that date. Based on the communications I've seen from the city so far, they plan to expeditiously move on requesting the district's dissolutions. So I don't think it'll be that long, but the trigger is going to be the city request.
Okay. So most likely it'll be close to zero for the south side in 2023. Is that correct? This is somewhat important because we're going to go out and ask the voters for something like, well, the numbers, we don't know exactly what the numbers are, but probably somewhere around 6 million a year to continue to actually fairly radically change the next greenways levy.
I'm not sure we can, and I'm not sure we can say any more than we already have, John, because it's a decision the board has to make in November. And I think Frank has said basically all he can say about it. It'll be significantly reduced.
And we really, there's a lot of things still on the table, but I can't imagine it being higher, that's for sure.
No, and it'll be lower, just how much lower, we don't know.
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
All right. Sensing we've completed our agenda and hearing no other urgent issues, I'd like to adjourn the meeting to be resumed again July 6th at 6 p.m.